Okay, this is going to be politics, and I'll do this one first actually because it's political philosophy, but I guess I should have put this in philosophy, but oh well. So here's a Marx and Engels basic writings on politics and philosophy, edited by Louis S. Feuer. I actually have one of his books, Feuer, called Ideologies and Ideologists, I think. So this is another books on Marx and Engels. I have a few now. So I have read his Communist Manifesto, but I haven't read more detailed. Marx certainly had a contribution to economics in terms of espousing a kind of socialism, but he also had his contributions are also in history in terms of coming up with a materialist conception of history. And it's very Hegelian, which is where Marx comes from, in the sense that it sees transitions in history as inevitable, and therefore, in a sense, the ideas suggest that human beings are determined by fate, that history will go through certain transitions no matter what. And he had it's called dialectical materialism. Dialectical part of the phrase means that there's going to be polarities set up, and throughout history, the polarities will win each other over. They will defeat each other. So, for example, the poor, let's say there's a corporatist, let's say there's a fascism going on, where the government, which is definition of that, the government and business are married. They're sleeping with one another. They are, it's a conspiracy against the public, right? You've got the business and government working with each other. And you get this like Brave New World scenario of business and government colluding and running the world and enslaving the population. Marx would say that's fine, that's okay. But what will happen is the middle and the lower classes will rise up and they will defeat that. They will destroy the government, they will destroy the corporations, they will loot them, they will ransack, they will kill and murder people probably too. And they will take over. But what will happen is when they take over, they will create a rebel class. Maybe it's the surviving corporation, the surviving businessmen, or the surviving aristocracy, maybe the surviving government or something. And they will eventually rise up because the lower classes will impoverish everybody, I don't know, will loot and steal and I don't know, whatever, right? And eventually that other class will rise up and defeat them. And so that's the dialectical, that there's always a for and against, that there's always opposites, and that they will continuously cycle and defeat each other and change history. Now, Marx didn't think that went on forever. He did believe that there was a conclusion. So, for example, he believed that capitalism was an important part in human history. There would be an exploited. He does define capitalism as where you essentially have exploitation of labor, and you have private property owners who own everything and enslave everyone, kind of. He thought that was fine. He thought that transition of capitalism and that technically that sacrifice of those workers was necessary because it's going to create tons and tons of wealth. And then what he thought would happen, as a dialectical materialism would suggest, is those lower classes would rise up, it would defeat the factory owners and the business people and all that kind of stuff, defeat the upper classes, the rich classes, and create kind of a slide into socialism where property is communally owned and everyone has the same standards of living. Everyone, as Marx says, everyone should do what they can based on their ability. They should work as hard as they can, and people should get what they need for a basic life, basic living condition, kind of, to sustain the socialism. What kind of that meant was that the amazing amount of wealth produced by capitalism would then produce a utopia in socialism, because we have enough technology, we have enough food production that we can just keep it going, and we don't have to exploit people. Everyone will get a basic needs, but people will still have to work to maintain that. But it'll be a better society. It'll be a more equal society. because now we can afford it. That's the point. The capitalism produces tons of wealth, and then we slip into a happy utopia because we have all that wealth saved up and stored up and perhaps regenerating itself. And now, so that was Marx's view. But of course, one thing that's kind of interesting is if you've been around YouTube long enough, you may have heard of the Zeitgeist Movement. And this is off of Marx. This is providing a way this could work. And what they say is that eventually in time, we will construct robots that will do all the labor and hard effort and allow human beings to live in peace and happiness and relative freedom. Well, probably not freedom, but relative safety and have enough food and all that kind of stuff. Relative, I guess leisure, maybe leisure. Relative leisure, because all the robots will be doing all the work, all the distribution centers. You'll sign on a computer, you need a table, then you'll punch in the computer, you need a table, and then you'll get a table delivered to you by a robot. You may have seen, and recently in the news, Amazon has these little helicopter robots that will fly packages to your door if you're within so many kilometers of the distribution center. That's the beginning. At least that's one evidence that at least can work up to that point. But that's one way of applying Marx. How could this work? How can we have a sustainable future through Marxism? That's one movement. That's one movement that's trying to suggest a way to do that. Okay, that's enough on that. Here's a book I kind of regret buying, but it might be worth looking at. Here's Ralph Nader. You may know he was a libertarian presidential candidate in the States. Only the super rich can save us. He is I think he's railing against corporations in this book. Apparently this book is kind of fiction. It's kind of a story, but it's about the real world. So, but anyways, it's supposed to be kind of a railing against corporations and Walmart's evil and stuff like that. It's very big though. Like, it's a lot of real estate for a book, so it's got to be good, or I'm going to take it back to the library. Or not the library, to a used bookstore. Here is Longitudes and Latitudes. Longitudes and Attitudes. Exploring the World After September 11th. This is by Thomas L. Friedman. So this is kind of a book on what do we do now after a massive terrorist event. And he talks about during September 11th, and he talks about the ramifications. So it's a little myopic because it wasn't that long ago. I guess it was 10 years ago, but what does it really mean in the grand scheme of things? There is a problem of myopia in history where you're too early to really say anything because you haven't really seen how everything is developed and what has happened. So anyways, I thought it'd be interesting. I've got a few books on terrorism, like Bush's biography and Decision Points and the official report on 9/11 and some other ones too. So that just adds to that. Here's Mark Levin, Liberty and Tyranny. I recently, maybe a month ago, I found Mark Levin. I don't remember how. Maybe Bill Whittle mentioned him, who you should look up if you're interested in, I guess, Republican politics. But Mark Levin is a radio guy, and you should look up Mark Levin on YouTube and put the search criterion on most views. He's got some really funny rants against people call in and say stuff to him. And he's got some really funny, I remember one was on Michelle Obama. And he just goes nuts. He just yells on the radio. And it's entertaining. But anyways, he's a conservative radio guy like Rush Limbaugh. And so, I guess I found this recently, a couple days ago. So I'm interested in what they have to say. And last one for politics. I just found this actually at my university bookstore, and it was on sale. So it was cheap though. It was like probably $2 or $3 or something. The New Road to Serfdom, A Letter of Warning to America, Daniel Hannan. I have no idea who that is. You better know that The Road to Serfdom was written by Hayek. Very important book. A very important critique of socialism, how it's impossible. So I'm happy to see what this informed work has to say about the 21st century, because of course Hayek was writing in the mid-20th century. So I'm glad to see what connections he's made with Hayek's work and today's America. Let me just see when this was published, because I'm just kind of curious how much he knows about what's occurred. 2010, so this will be the first, this will be, I guess, Obama's first term. And just at the very top there's Statue of Liberty in chains. But the problem is, who is advocating, who is upset about liberties lost in the States? Very few people, very few. But it's very unfortunate, because it seems like changes in history have always been from a few, and the masses always corral. But how to get them to corral in a certain way is another question. But I hate to talk about things like that, because you hope that your neighbor, your family, your friends are not the masses, that they are thinking people and have perspectives and have experiences. And at the same time, why is it always a few that really change the world? Like and what does that suggest about everybody else? Okay, next will be fiction, modern fiction, some fantasy and some other stuff.